Hi, everybody. This is Miss Mac. I am going to talk to you today about modeling with functions, both discrete and continuous. While we're doing these, you're going to have to pay close attention because not only do you have to be able to look at a graph and find numbers in ordered pairs, but you're going to have to be able to describe what's happening given a certain situation. So if we take a look at this first example here, it says Miss Mac read 1/3 of her book in an hour and a half. She took a break from reading for about 3 hours, then finished her book in 3.5 more hours. And then you can see we have a graph here, and across the bottom we have hours, and across the side we have part of the book read. So it's important to make sure you read those labels so you know what's going on. You can see that our hours start at 0. It's when I started reading, goes up to 8, and part of my book read, notice it's in fractions, and this 1 here represents the entire book. So it says identify the following characteristics and interpret each in context. So you can see we have lots of different characteristics we've already talked about. On this next slide, I have these filled in, and I'll let you take a look at them in more detail by yourself, but I want to talk about a couple of them. So if we take a look, for instance, at the maximum is the 0.81, which is the point right here. It represents the fact that it took 8 hours for me to read the entire book. Remember the X, this first number is my number of hours, and my Y, my 1, is my part of my book read. If I look at my domain, and notice how I put my less than or equal to in here. My domain, I am reading from 0 to 8 hours. 0 is when I hadn't started, 8 is when I get done. And my range goes from 0 part of the book to the entire part of the book, which is 1. So those are just a few of the things that you could have to look at and interpret when you're looking at one of these graphs. This one's probably a little bit more simple. It says Tilly's growth chart on here. And you can see down at the bottom, we have the age in year. And across the side, we have height in inches. So I don't know if Tilly's a boy or a girl. I'm going to say it's a girl. So it says, put a star on the point represented by the ordered pair 6, 46. So if I come over here to the right to where X is 6, and then I go up to where 46 is, this right here is where I'm going to put the star. So I'll erase those two things. So that's where my star belongs. And it says, explain the meaning of this point. Well, if you take a look on this next slide, I already have the star there. It's kind of off just a teeny bit, but it says when Tilly is 6 years old, she is 46 inches tall. It also says state the domain and range in context of this situation, which means what does it stand for? What do the X's and Y's stand for? So the domain, remember the domain is all of our X's, or first parts of our function or inputs of our function, represents Tilly's age in years, and I list the actual numbers for which I have data points. The range represents Tilly's height in inches, and again, I represent that with just the specific numbers that are on the graph. It's not an interval because it's not continuous, it's a discrete graph. The next one says Mrs. Richard goes to the ice cream shop several times a week. The function c of x equals 3 of x plus 4 represents the cost of ice cream when she orders x scoops. So the first part of this over here on the left says find c of 2 and interpret it in context. The second part says find x so that c of x equals 34 and interpret it in context. So on the next slide, I have that done here. And you'll notice when I say find C of 2, remember this 2 right here is my input. So that means I need to find the output. So we take our function, which is this, we put in 2 where the X is, and we calculate and we get 10. This 10 is my output when my input is 2. And then if I want to actually interpret that, that means when Mrs. Richard orders 2 scoops of ice cream, it costs her $10. Now, doing the last example, it says find x so that c of x equals 34 and interpret it in context. So you'll notice we do not know the input. That's what we are asked to find, but we are given the output. So what I did is I took that rule, the 3x plus 4, and I set it equal to this output. And that allows me to solve the equation and get x to be 10. Now, in this case, my 10 is my input. So my 10 is my input, and it gives me my 34 as my output. So that means when Mrs. Richard spends $34 on ice cream, she actually gets 10 scoops. So when you look at these problems, you'll have to make sure you're very careful with what you're looking at and interpret and be very clear in what you're saying. The other thing I want to do is just leave you with a little cartoon for today, if it ever pops up here. Whoops, I'm not on eraser. Okay, so you can see the teachers at the board, and the little boy says, "Just a darn minute. Yesterday you said that x equals 2. Notice today x equals 3. So, hope you had a little smile on your face for that, and have a great day. Bye-bye.